It's the great romantic lie that my desires are my own, and I'm not influenced by Instagram, and I'm not influenced by what I heard at the party, and I'm not influenced by my colleagues. Only teenagers are influenced by people around them.
Right.
And humans are human. We imitate. That's part of being human. But it really is about really looking at, where does our desire come from?
We are here with Mikelann Valterra. Thank you for being with us, Mikelann.
Oh, hello from Seattle. I am so happy to be on this cool podcast. I love it.
Thanks. So we'll drop in by just really naming you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a financial therapist, you're a financial coach, a money coach. And I'm curious about the distinction between those two things, but we can get to that. You help women specifically around the world rise above the money fog and transform, I'll say, our relationships to money and design our ideal lives. I will recommend to everybody go and find Mikelann Valterra on LinkedIn. She is generous with content, and the content is rich and actually helpful. Go check it out.
You mean real takeaways?
You love and dance the Argentine tango.
My
I'm going to start there.
passion.
Tell me about that. Where did that start?
Yes, the dancing money coach. Someone said I should change all my social media to dancing money coach. I'm like, I don't think I'm quite ready for that. But it happened in the aftermath of empty nesting. So yeah, when I empty nested about 7-8 years ago, and this child was also done boomeranging, as they do, right? I started dancing, and oh my gosh, what started off as this little tiny hobby turned into this crazy passion, obsession, lifestyle, whatever words you want to put in it. So I coach by day and I dance by night, right? And my dance partner and I just decided to, who, by the way, I married, we just decided to compete in the National Tango Championship. So yeah, that's why tango's on my mind, because
Outstanding.
I'm going to leave from here to the dance studio and practice. So yeah,
congratulations.
It's a lovely life. Yeah. So this is what I'm always asking all my coaching clients. Well, what's your tango, right? What do you want to spend money on? What do you want to protect? What's important to you? Because it's so wonderful to live this balanced life. And as you and I know, money is not all just about save for the future. You've got to enjoy your life.
Yep. One of the things that really strikes me when I think about even myself with my friends, we don't talk about money. And I don't know if men talk about their money more or not, but they started sooner in terms of trading baseball cards or Canadian hockey cards, right? There was an idea of exchange, of value.
Right.
And I don't talk about it. I'm learning. Is that common? It's
super common. Yeah. The Rise Above the Money Fog book that I put out recently talks about, well, first of all, what is money fog, which you and I can get into that, but also where does it come from? And, I'll just say real quickly before we dive deeper, money fog is when people are vague about money and have a lot of feelings about being vague. We're in fear and we're in overwhelm and we're in guilt and all that stuff that we can unpack. But the big question you're bringing up is, well, where does it come from? And money fog for many of us comes from our childhoods, from the simple fact that it wasn't talked about. And so there's no modeling. You grow up with this incredibly important thing called money. It's important because the adults are somehow bringing it up or talking about it, or you see it. And it's at the same time invisible. It's not discussed. And what you said is so true. Girls grow up having it discussed with them far less. They talked to our brothers about money more than they talk to us. And every survey says this. And is it changing? It is. It is. It doesn't change as fast as you would think, right? But I'm in my 50s, and the vast majority of my clients are, 40s, 50s, 60s. And we all grew up with money not being talked about. It wasn't a polite topic. It wasn't. And boys did talk about it more with themselves in terms of, like you said, what are you going to give me for the baseball card?
Right.
right? We didn't bring money up as girls between girls the way boys bring money up. We weren't selling our Barbie dolls. And if we were, we weren't generally, there wasn't as much money talk. There's a lot in there. And this early experience around money or lack thereof really affects us as adults because, here we are, we reach the age of whatever adulthood age is considered. We're done with college and out there, and we're supposed to know how to handle this really, really big subject, how to earn it, how to spend it, how to manage it. It's this huge subject. And many people reach adulthood with like almost no training. And then they wonder, well, what's wrong with me that I'm not handling this well when they have no training?
Makes so much sense. Watching this, remembering my dad doing that with my brother, and my dad was a great dad, but that's not what we talked about. There's something about middle age too. There are two things coming up for me. Those of you who are just listening to the audio can't see me holding up the book and all my flags and notes in it right now.
I love
Right.
someone who has my book, so many stickies in my book. I love seeing
Yep.
that.
So many. And it's really joyful and also convicting. I'll say like there are parts of it that make me quite uncomfortable. And I
Well, there
suppose
you go.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
sign we're doing it right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's how I take it. And that's when I know to lean in and get really, really curious.
Mm-hmm.
And something you talk about is women in midlife in
Mm-hmm.
particular.
Yeah.
What shifts? What changes? Why is that noteworthy for this conversation?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the book, just for your listeners, the book was written about what is money fog, and it was told through the story of four women. So there's basically, it's a short book. There's four characters in the book, and it's about how these four women, all in different stages of midlife, are handling what's the impact of the money fog on them. And one of the reasons why money fog comes up, rears its head in midlife, is money fog tends to come up a lot when we're in deep transition. And midlife is just a big transition of so many, many different sorts. Because what I find, Sheila, is that we're all doing the best we can, and we get used to doing money a certain way, and we finally find our rhythm, if you will, around money. We may not be thrilled, but we're adults, we're doing the best that we can. And midlife hits, and let's just start talking about all the transitions. Did you empty nest? Are you suddenly paying for your kids to go to college, right? How about raise your hand if you got divorced or remarried? Yeah, exactly,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I
Raising
saw
my
a hand
hand.
go up.
Yeah.
Are different things happening, with your parents? Anyone in midlife shifting jobs? Right? I mean, there's
Right.
just so many transitions. And so whenever we go through a transition, money fog rears its head because, as I talked about in that book, there's certain questions you always want to be able to answer, namely, what can I afford? And how much is enough? These really core questions around money. And again, we get used to figuring it out. We eventually go, okay, I kind of know what I can afford. I kind of know how much money is enough. Let's not really talk about it a lot, but just kind of do our best. But when you go through one of these transitions, the answers to these core questions change. How much is enough changes suddenly on the other side of divorce. The answer of how much money you need to live changes. The answer of what you can afford changes. And so you're suddenly like, oh my gosh, my stress around money has gone through the roof, and we don't always know why. Because maybe the transition was wonderful. Maybe you got married to your great love at, 48 or whatever this wonderful thing is that happened. But you're like, this is lovely. And I'm more stressed about money than I've been in 10 years. Right. And it's usually because this transition brings up the money fog.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the stress and I'm also thinking about disembodiment. So the stress where I'm burning it, I'm spinning on it, I'm worrying, fretting, the anxiety, and then
Uh-huh.
also really
Yeah.
turning away from taking responsibility for this sacred energy, this resource. And so as I think about the relationship between those two things, I know for me, I can feel myself pop between them some of the time. What is more common or what do you see?
Yeah, I would go in two different directions. You just brought up two big subjects. You brought up anxiety and you brought up power. So anxiety, money anxiety affects women more so than men. And so there's this interesting gender piece to it. Now, money fog is ubiquitous. Men suffer from the money fog just as much as women do. Men are just as prone to either be, big savers or big spenders, or all the different generalizations that you bring up around, kind of people's money personalities apply both to men and women. But anxiety affects women more. And all the studies look at this. And, it's a big question of, why. And, part of it is we are deep feelers around money. We feel, this is super generalization. So there'll be people that will be like, no, that's a generalization. It's true, right?
Yep.
But, so part of it's that. Part of it is we feel deeply impacted around concern for our current life in terms of transition and how it affects our children. Men tend to be more impacted around worrying about themselves in the future. So there's kind of different conversations that happen. It's partly why people fight in divorce, because they're literally on two different planets in terms of what they're worrying or thinking or stressing about, right? And part of it goes back to the fact that more women than men grew up with not a lot of conversation around money. And that impacts the anxiety. And I would also throw this in, Sheila, that, we're living as women through a historical change around money. And I think that we forget that really small, that's incredibly huge piece, right? Meaning in my grandmother's generation, it was assumed that she wouldn't work and all she'd be taken care of, et cetera, right? 20 years later, in my mom's generation, only 20 years, it's assumed that, well, she might work and contribute to the family money and be part of managing the money. Okay, 20 years later, my generation, it's assumed that I will work, I will be self-supporting, right? But even that doesn't mean that I had the assumption that I had to support a family for. That was not part of my generation. It was assumed that for those of us in our 50s, that we would make money, we would absolutely be self-supporting, which is a huge change historically, massive change historically. We forget, right? But again, that's not the assumption that men have of I need to make enough to support a family for. And so the rules and expectations around money for women are changing so fast. And depending on your family and your generation and your culture, and, everything I just said was super general, so you're going to be unique. Chances are you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, the rules have changed in my very lifetime. The
Yes.
expectations have changed in my very lifetime. And so what the heck, right? This is not how my mom raised me to be around money. And yet here I am. It's 2025. We're powerful women, which was the last piece that you brought up, which is this is also about women stepping into power and owning power. And it's hard to step in and really dive into power without really getting our arms around money. So, but that's new, right? This is generationally not the conversation 25 years ago.
No, it's so new. That's such a great point. And it's really interesting to layer on top of that the fact, for example, I'm half Korean, even though I'm entirely Irish looking. And so my mother and her two brothers came to Canada from Korea when my mom was 17. So you layer this cultural component over it.
Wow.
And she was married to my dad and trying to raise a family. And what I took away, for example, if it was talked about, it was in the spirit of stress. And there was something kind of secretive about it.
Yeah.
And there's this spirit of, as a kid, I know they're talking about something and there's something more to this, but I'm not clear what it is.
Right.
But it feels dangerous.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And the other, let's just keep layering in the complexity here. A lot of us are very, very sensitive, and we're sponges, and kids in general are sponges. Like you were just saying, we pick up the vibe, we pick up something's going on, we pick up money is important, and not all is well. And so it's part of what creates the anxiety, and that you can't. It's almost like there's some monster foggy. I can't put my fingers on it, but I know something's not right. And we grow up with this feeling that not all is right with the world because many of us were raised in families where it was considered appropriate to keep money behind closed doors. So that didn't keep the stress from leaking out. So a lot of times the main stuff that kids would pick up is what you said. It's the negative stuff. It's the stress stuff. It's the half said, right? But
Yes, the
kids
half
are
said.
sponges. The kids are sponges. And if you are a very sensitive person, double that, double that. And I've got a lot of highly sensitive clients, myself, included. And so people with high sensitivity pick up so much stuff.
Yeah. And I'm, thinking about then that shift, when you go from childhood to what carries forward into our 50s, our midlife, whatever chunk
Hmm.
that is. And I guess my interest for purposes of this podcast called Crazy Beautiful Truth is what are the things we miss? What are the truths that are a little out there, but they're right in front of us and we forget? What are the things that give us access to our lives, to our life force, to our vitality? And when I think about that and loving ourselves back to life, I think about it in two ways. What are the barriers to that? And what are the opportunities to that? And money strikes me as being at risk of being one of the most profound barriers
Hmm.
that we don't talk about or that we're learning to talk about, but then we're clumsy talking about, which is fine. We're learning.
Hmm.
Um, but what would you say? Where's the starting point for the conversation?
I really like what you just said. It is the money is both the greatest obstacle and the greatest key. It is the keys to the queendom, right? I mean, it is the key because, as a money coach, my biggest mission is helping people craft the life that they desire, the life that they want, the life that they deserve. And how do you do that? And many of us have heard that money is a tool, but that's very neutral sounding. And because it is such an emotional subject, it's like, let's make it a sacred tool. Let's make it a sacred tool to create the life that we want. So I think you're right. I mean, it's a big obstacle towards stepping into our truth. And, many people in midlife are ready to open the door, step into their truth, move past the obstacles, and if you don't deal with money, it is one of the blockages. Until we develop a healthy relationship to money, it's really hard to get up to the top of Maslow's hierarchy. It's hard to self actualize and really be all we can be if we are uncomfortable with looking at our money and using it wisely to create the life that we all deserve.
Yeah. So if we're looking at a before and an after, you know,
Hmm.
the listener and I are sitting over here taking secret notes going, okay, here's the before, here's the after. How do I recognize which bucket I fit in? Would you talk about the fog? I really loved this.
Money fog. Well, so I'll back up and say, just because it'll help make it more sense. So what is money coaching? Because a lot of listeners may think I'm a financial planner who does investments, and I'm not. I'm a financial coach, and the difference is, it used to be that people could see a financial planner for investments, or they could see perhaps a credit counselor if they were struggling with debt. Most people want to deal with both. We don't want debt. We want to build net worth. And neither of these really important professions deals well with the emotional side of money because money is very emotional. So we need both. We need both the practical and the emotional, which is partly where, money coaches come in. And money fog is simply put, and even though you and I know it's a big topic, it is when people are in stress, anxiety, and vagueness over money. So, as you know from the book, FOG, FOG, stands for something. When we are in fear around money, overwhelm around money, or guilt around money. And it's a way of saying if I feel fearful or overwhelmed or guilty when I think about my money, that is a signpost. As you and I know, feelings are an invitation to look at something. And these feelings are saying, what might be going on is you might be in a money fog. You might be in a money fog. So let me give your listeners maybe 5 or 6 questions so they can kind of diagnose their fog.
Great.
Um, if you ever felt frustrated and wondered to yourself, where did it all go? That's a sign of being in a money fog. If you feel like, the FOG, if you ever feel fear or anxiety when you think of your money, that's a sign of fog. If you've ever felt guilty when you think about something you purchased, that is a sign of potentially being in a money fog. If you don't have a system for being able to easily look at where your money is going and coming from, that's a sign. And then I'll add 2 more. If you don't know how much money you need to live comfortably, that's a sign of being in a money fog. It can be. You may say, well, no, I'm not in a money fog, but I resonate with that question. And I would say, if you don't feel like money is the sacred tool to live your best life, that's a sign of being in a money fog. And what I love, even though it's obviously this is a big emotional topic, but what I love about talking about money fog is when you're in it, you can't see it. And so that's why I'm asking these kind of diagnostic questions, because almost by definition, if you're in a fog, you can't see it. Like I wrote about in the opening of the book, you're climbing a mountain in a fog. You don't know you're in a fog or a smog until you come out above and look down.
Hey, so I'm stepping outside our conversation for just a moment to talk to you, my listener friend. If something in this episode is landing for you, if something made you feel seen, if something is challenging you to think differently, that is exactly what Crazy Beautiful Truth is here to do. I host this podcast because I believe there is always a crazy beautiful truth at play, working for us, guiding us into a life that we delight in. It shows up in the most surprising places, and I want to explore all of them. So I want to grow this platform. I want to bring you guests that are worth your time. So here's my ask. Would you take 30 seconds and hit follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching? Leave a comment, drop in a rating if something here has moved you. It legitimately helps this podcast to grow and to have more impact. If someone came to mind today while you're listening, please send it to them. This is how we spread the love together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your time here with me and with the guests that I have on board. Let's get back to it.
I used to live in San Francisco. I went to grad school down there, and the fog is so thick at San Francisco airport. I mean, I bet 75% of your listeners have had a delayed flight at SFO due to fog, because that's
Yep.
welcome to SFO, right? It's like
Right.
the most fogged in airport in the United States, I think. And so when you're on the ground driving, SFO is actually in Daly City, just south of San Francisco. So I was fascinated. I had never in my life driven in such dense fog. And there was a stoplight in front of every stoplight to tell you that there was a stoplight coming. There were 2 to 3 stoplights for every single stoplight, because the fog was so thick that if in Daly City you drove by a single stoplight, you'd crash. You would literally come across a light that was red and there's no time to stop, right? So there's like a warning system in Daly City that a light is coming, and then there'll be a light, and then there'll be a light. And so this
Wow.
is like what it feels like when you're driving in a money fog. You're tense, you've got your hands on the wheel, you can see about 10 feet in front of you, you're worried about getting in a money accident, and there's no vision. You can't look out into the future. You're trying to simply avoid an overspending accident, an under-earning accident. Something's going to happen with money, right? But you're
Right.
driving in a fog, and it takes every ounce to just stay in the present and keep going. There's no bigger picture, right? So when people are in a fog, it's like a condition, if you will, if we want to keep playing it out. It's this, I'll go out on a limb and say almost it feels like an illness. Some people feel like there's something wrong with me, but I can't name it, right?
Yes.
Because it's causing overspending, or it's causing underspending. I'm so in a fog, I don't know what I can spend. Don't spend anything. or it's causing overwork where people are working compulsively and they're super stressed because they're in a fog. They don't know how much money they need to make, or they're under earning. They don't know. And so they don't know what they need to make. So they're actually undercharging, right? But
Right.
all of this is being caused by this invisible condition called the money fog that so many of us are in, but nobody names it because it's this invisible substance that we're in, which is why I'm asking those kind of diagnostic questions.
That's so helpful. I'm having a really visceral response to what you're describing.
Yeah,
When we
it's
think of, yeah,
yeah,
when we think
it's the
about
stress
money.
anxiety response. That's a out of control, a horrible feeling. It just feels so icky.
Yeah. And it requires, there's a paradox here that I'm feeling that is, it calls us so immediately into the present, into the moment, to be
Mhm.
gripping the steering wheel as you describe it, paying attention to the lights, the traffic, what you can see, the eyes are straining, all of that. But simultaneously, it doesn't allow us to be present. I have to be so vigilant in
Mhm.
the moment that I can't be present in the moment. Accurate?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And one of the things I was writing about, and it took me a long time to articulate, is the seeds of possibility in our lives are all around us. We have so many juicy, wonderful possibilities and ideas and things that we can do and pursue. But when we're in a money fog in our life, we generally don't let the seeds of possibility land and take root. Like for example, you might be at a cocktail party and someone starts talking about they're an equestrian and they love riding horses, and you start to get excited and go, "Ooh, I've always been curious about horse riding." And then literally in the next second you go, "Oh, but I could never afford that. Oh, I wouldn't know what I would do financially. Oh, she must have a lot of money." And then you shut down and you move on. And that's what being in the money fog in terms of just gripping the steering wheel does, is we don't allow ourselves to entertain possibilities because all of that lifts our vision and go, "Oh, I wonder if I could afford another child or a second house or living half the year in Portugal," or whatever it is. If we're in a fog, we won't allow ourselves to go into that field of possibility, which is why I think, working with money is such a sacred, sacred task because we deserve a life full of possibility.
Yes. And you, one of the priestesses, illuminating the way for us.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
we realize we're in the fog and we recognize, we get brave enough to admit
Mhm.
I'm out of my league or I'm overwhelmed. There's something I'm not addressing. And what I know as a coach and a leadership coach is that it requires some internal courage to actually even get to that stage, to acknowledge I could be doing better. Doesn't mean I'm a terrible person,
Mhm.
but what if I turn squarely to the big scary thing chasing me and just
Mhm.
look at it? What then?
Well, I mean, I'll throw the obvious out that you would no, I would say it's partly why coaching exists, because I mean, you and I are obviously talking about money, but you're a coach, and you know how many people are afraid to do that next thing without your guidance by their side, and illuminating the pathway and asking them questions and supporting them and the accountability. So, part of it is, do you need support? And, not everybody does. Some people are true do-it-yourselfers, all sorts of different subjects, right? But part of it is just asking that question: do you need support? Do you need help with someone holding the light? Right? I mean, I've had so many people say that they just feel like they're in the dark around money, and it's not a great feeling, and you need someone to like shine the light. From there, whether you do it alone or with someone's help, where I go is, what are the first steps to getting out of the money fog? How can you start to get clear and breathe easier around money? And I am a huge advocate of what I would call elegant financial simplicity. Elegant financial simplicity. And what I mean by that, Sheila, is that people tend to complicate money, and there's a lot of reasons how it happens. People have too many accounts. They just do. And sometimes they're left over from relationships. Sometimes it's, the banks are like, I'll give you a set of steak knives if you open up another account. I mean, there's lots of reasons why people have too many accounts. But the more accounts you have, 3 checking accounts and 5 savings accounts and 8 credit cards, the more fog you're in and the more stress you have around money. And financial peace is correlated to fewer accounts. And part of it is time and energy. How much time and energy do we have to look and manage and deal with so many places where we're just transferring money back and forth? So that is a really great place for people to start is, can we simplify our account structure?
I find that I am struck, and I won't lie, a little angered by the fact that every time I go into my credit report, they're offering a list of, look at these 10 credit cards you're qualified for.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-approval. And I was a banker before I was a lawyer, before I was a coach. And I look at that and it just, something inside me just churns because I think we set ourselves up,
Oh, yeah.
especially when we're scared and we think, okay, if I just have access to all the money, if I have access to the credit lines, if I have access to the limits.
Yeah, that's so well said. They prey on our fear and anxiety. And many people feel like, well, I'm not going to use the card or the line, but what if? What if? And, we have to feel good. We have to have safety and security walking around the planet. We have to create that. And so if we don't intentionally create it, more ideally with savings accounts and money in savings, then we will go to, well, what if we just had an open line or an open credit card? And, eventually without a savings habit, as we all know, we tap those lines, we tap the cards, and people are in so much pain around consumer debt. And that doesn't touch a subject called student loans, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of pain out there around debt.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I want to make sure that you know how to find Mikelann, because you may want to reach out before we're done. So would you tell us your website?
Yeah, so I work with clients all over North America, but the site that's easy to remember is Seattle Money Coach. And listeners can grab a free ebook on basically diagnosing your level of money fog. It's a great quiz, super easy, dare I say fun,
Yep.
grab it, because I put out a newsletter once a month on conscious money. And I write at the intersection of personal finance, psychology, and self-actualization. And, obviously they can get the discovery call as well.
For me, when I think about the money fog, one of the things that intimidates me is this idea that I have to get really, really smart about the markets all of a sudden. I have to know how to invest, and I have to know when to move. Who can I trust with the management of, or helping me think about savings? How true is that? How expert do we have to get? I'm wishing for an answer.
Yeah, well, no, I'll give you an answer. It's not true. Yeah, it's not
Okay.
true, right? Yeah, we can check that one off the
Great.
box, right? Yeah, we can check it off the box. I mean, no, I don't do investments, but I absolutely work with people on their net worth and partner up with lots of wonderful financial planners. And part of it is, do you need, I mean, in my opinion, money coaches are like the family doctors. We sit at almost the center in terms of a lot of people's relationship to money. And then everyone is a specialist. Financial planner is a specialist, an accountant is a specialist, a mortgage broker is a specialist, a life insurance person is a specialist. And, we need, my CPA is one of my favorite specialists, right? So, part of it is who's on your team and creating a team that you feel really, really good about. And elegant simplicity absolutely applies to investments as well, right? I mean, we could get into all sorts of stuff around, index funds and but, we need good planners that we trust. And ultimately, it should not be complicated.
Okay. So that's comforting. I
Yeah.
really love that you point to this elegant financial simplicity, um, and all of the ways elegant simplicity is of service to our
Hmm.
peace and to our well-being and to our ability to attend to and notice those seeds, the things that are calling to us, right? Do I want the horse?
Hmm.
Is that something that matters to me? You named a thing. I grew up riding horses. I didn't own one,
Hmm.
but I was in leases. So that was one of my, oh, someday I'll own two horses. Well, I haven't done that yet.
Hmm.
So that piques my interest again. Do I want to
Yeah.
tango and travel all over the world as I empty nest?
Yeah,
Right.
it's exciting. I mean, you want to feel like you can explore the possibilities that come up for you. When I was in my 20s, I worked on my private pilot's license, and I didn't finish it. It's kind of a story for another day. But now, when I drive by Boeing Airfield and I'm in the Seattle area, I sometimes ask myself, "Am I called to finish my pilot's license? Am I called to go back to flying?" And what I love about that, Sheila, is money is not now, would I have to figure out the money? Is it an expensive hobby? It is. But money doesn't stop me from going into the inquiry and discerning if that is where I want to put my time and my money and my energy, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
money in relationships. You don't want money to be why you stay or why you go, right? You want it to be about many, many important things. And we all know money is a big, important piece, right? But you want to feel fabulous about money. And that's not a reason why you stay or go in a relationship. It's about your beloved.
So well named. So if somebody's looking at the question, I do want this thing, I'm trying to discern, can I afford it? How do they start to answer that when it's sort of right in front of my face? I'm looking at the thing. I don't know if I can afford it. I know I'm
Mhm.
inclined towards fear around money. What's your advice?
Well, and so that gets into the realm of financial therapy, right? Which I love. So I'm a financial coach and a financial therapist, and they're all combined. So I think we need both, right?
Hmm.
Um, so there's the practical answer and then there's the exploration answer, right? The practical answer is, how would this fit within an annual budget, within an annual income and spending plan? And I say that that's a practical question, but it's life-changingly awesome to have a plan for what you want to do with your money. Oh my gosh, for the whole year tells you like, wow, now I know what I need to make. Wow, now I know what I can afford to spend on tango or whatever, right? So
Yep.
I don't want to neglect that really important question, which is, how does this fit within your plan, right? How does it fit,
Right.
right? So that's definitely one of the big places we go. And then from there we look at, well, what is this really about? What is the real need underneath the need? And so, like, for example, I've got clients where we look at what you spend on clothes. Clothes is a great, super complicated topic. So, and it's partly because clothes represent so many different things. Are we spending to feel better? Are we spending to deal with perfectionist issues? Are we spending because we want to feel attractive? Are we spending because we need to up our professional game? Right. But naming what is the real need. And then, is there a way to meet the need more creatively? Because needs don't go away whether or not you can, quote, afford it, right? So
Right.
if you really want to up your wardrobe because you want to feel more confident, that's real. That's real. But once you name it, it's not all about the Christmas party. It's not all about, I want to look like so and so at work. It's because I want to feel more confident, right? Then we can find different ways to satisfy that need at all sorts of different levels of money. But a lot of times people are throwing money at what I would say is a surface want. They're not really looking at what is important about wanting to ride horses, right? What is important about wanting to take your family to Hawaii on vacation, right? And just exploring what is that really about is important. It's not about don't do it. It's about naming the core underlying needs so that you can look at, how many ways can I meet that need, including I want to take the family to Hawaii, right? But really exploring.
That's so great. And I think about it as in so many other aspects of mindfulness, what I hear you pointing to is the pause. Create a
Uh-huh.
pause. And if we
Uh-huh.
can just increase the pause between stimuli and response, i.e., see the pretty sweater, buy the pretty sweater, that allows us to check in. It's sort of a hope giving pause that lets
Right.
me touch down and plug into something true and real.
I love it.
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
so helpful.
in the space between thought and action resides discernment. And so we're opening that space. And I guess the other I'll throw this in, Sheila. I'm not sure where it fits in the conversation, but it's just the subject that I love. This concept of mimetic desire, and it, the reality is, so many of us want and desire things because we see other people wanting and desiring them. And mimetic desire is not, doesn't make people happy to talk about, because it's basically saying we're imitating people, and adults don't like that. It's the great romantic lie that my desires are my own, and I'm not influenced by Instagram, and I'm not influenced by what I heard at the party, and I'm not influenced by my colleagues at work, right? Only teenagers are influenced by people around them.
Right.
And so, adults, I mean, humans are human. We imitate. That's part of being human. So when you get into looking at mimetic desire, and there's, kind of a whole field of theory and philosophers that, a lot of this comes out of the theory of a philosopher named Rene Girard. Um, but it really is about really looking at, where does our desire come from? Is it a deep desire, or is it a surface desire? Did this just come from my pocket? Because if it came from my pocket, it means it came from my phone, and I was scrolling through some feed and a desire was implanted in me, right? And name that. Or is this something I've been wanting for a while, and it's a deeper desire? But it's a great, great exploration, and we can take it beyond money, obviously, because, mimetic desire is not all about money. But I love talking about it because, as you know, in the coaching world, happiness levels are decreasing. It
Yes.
makes me sad, and it's not a money thing. It's all over the place, but happiness levels are decreasing, and so everyone is trying to figure out why. And part of it is mimetic desire is increasing because the envy machine is out of control. And it's something that I don't want to avoid talking about, even though it's a big topic.
It's huge. The language that I use around it is around the origin stories. How are we sourcing our origin stories? Whether we want to go way back to childhood and what did we inherit? What were my parents trying to achieve that I feel like I owe a duty of loyalty to the pursuit of, all the way to what did I pick up on Instagram today? And oh, yeah, I did hit that ad. And shoot, I just bought this cute little photo flipper. I don't even have a shelf for it. And it's really coming up for me to get curious about and to do some journaling around where I have healthy and unhealthy, or maybe it's helpful and less helpful origin stories around
Yeah.
my relationship to money.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, your clients are so lucky to be able to work with you. That's so deep
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
rich. That's a big, big deal to be able to lead people on that journey of their origin story. It's huge.
Yeah. And I think for women, midlife, this is where we have the opportunity to say, wait, how did I get here? Was this
Yeah.
the prize?
Yeah. Well
um,
said.
if people want to come out of the money fog, or if they're noticing it, what is the cue or the point at which they would reach out to you or somebody like you? I'm going to say you. At what point did they reach out to Mikelann?
I would say that the cue is when you hear yourself saying, I am tired of not feeling in control of my money, or I want to feel more in control of my finances. Because that's the number one thing I hear, Sheila, is people call me, and the word control is very common. The other cue is transition. I have a huge number of clients that call me coming out of transition. A lot of times it's divorce or empty nesting or, some of the ones that you and I talked about, but they're ready to feel better about money. And I find a lot of my clients are, this is not a word, I made this word up, but they're well therapized.
Yes.
They
Good word.
okay, I'm not sure if that's a word, but, they've done a lot of really good work. They've done a lot of good work, and so sometimes money almost feels like it's the final frontier, that they're ready to look at this last corner, open up the last closet to clean out, and that's when I would encourage people to call me. So, people are welcome to just book a discovery call. I'm happy to talk to people for 20 minutes and explore this, and I make a lot of referrals. I'm not the only money coach. I probably know every money coach and I've, trained and taught money coaches, right? So if I'm not the person,
Yeah.
I think I can probably find you someone. Because I think this work is so, I have such a sense of mission around it that I want people to feel better so that they can go live their best life.
So, if you were to say one thing that you hope the listener takes away from this conversation, the one gem, what would you make as that offering?
Oh my goodness, only one.
I
Um,
know.
how can you simplify your finances? How can you
Beautiful.
simplify your finances? That's a great takeaway. You could take the earbuds out for everyone listening to this podcast and you could pop online and go, "Do I really need all these accounts? Is there anything that I can potentially simplify so that I don't have so darn many places to go?" I mean, yes, we could get into talking about credit cards and we want to be careful about closing cards that have long histories on them and we don't have time to get into all of that. But I know that your listeners get it. Is there a way to have this beautiful relationship to money that feels less scattered? That's a great place to dive in.
Yeah. You're casting a vision for me where I see us in partnership and relationship with our money, our wealth, our ideas of money, our ideas of wealth, of abundance, of generosity, being able to be the generous women that we want to be in the world,
Mhm.
um, and having the means to do that. And thank you for really helping that take root in my being. I can feel it, and it actually feels really different. And so, to the listener, I call you out to be brave, be brave. Just look and see what's there. Look at the accounts, look at yourself, look in the pause
Right.
and reach out. Right. And then start to wonder what's possible if we are in great relationship to our
Absolutely.
money. What is possible?
The field of all possibility.
That's exactly right. I'll recommend again the book, Rise Above the Money Fog. Um, Mikelann Valterra, I appreciate you. So when I recorded this conversation way back in season 1 with Mikelann Valterra, I felt so vulnerable, even dumb, if I'm honest. I'm a smart woman. I've got a couple of degrees, and my very first career was actually in banking. I was counseling people on savings. I was selling mutual funds and supporting investments. I was literally helping people to finance their first car and their first home. I have more foundation than most. And still, I was completely intimidated because I was not giving myself enough credit. I was putting my head in the sand and assuming this was bigger than me. I was managing by not managing at all. So, as a direct result of this conversation, I am now leaning into my strengths. I want to highlight this for you. I know I ask good questions. I know know how to get smart. And I know when to trust the experts. So I'm using all of this. I'm asking better questions than I used to. And I'm actually not afraid to reveal my ignorance, which I didn't even realize was in my way. I'm learning about my own patterns in spending, and I'm learning when fear does raise its head. I also have some clarity on my own financial situation in a way I didn't actually have before. So here's what I want you to hear. You deserve to feel competent, clear, and resourced. This is not just about how much money we have or need. It's about peace for the way. That's whether we assume we are working till the end of our days, whether we're preparing for retirement or preparing for significant life change. The idea that our finances are a sacred tool for designing a life that we love is a really big deal. And I love that Mikelann pointed to this. So what changes for you if you actually let that in? A lot changed for me. I want for all of us to feel friendly with our financial life, to feel free when we open that statement, and to be able to make decisions without dread. So much of this comes down to the beliefs and the stories that we are carrying from much earlier in our life. Most of them are inherited, most of them are unexamined, and most of them are living in the shadows. So bringing them into the light changes everything. It's much less scary than you were imagining, I'm sure. What shifted for me in some ways was quieter than I expected. It is the better questions. It is the less dread. It's also the courage to ask the questions, okay, but what if? Those questions that are fear-based. I have financial support I actually trust and value. And these are little things that are not actually that little at all. So all of this is available to you and to me by just looking. That is the crazy, beautiful truth of this all. I know that I recommend Mikelann without reservation, but if she is not the person for you, she will help you find the people that can support you best. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.